Oh, don't worry about this, Mom.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. So today we're going to hear the story of when Colleen was born. And it starts with Bob and Ruth. And we met at a dance at the University of Portland. You know, the kind where you stand against the wall, the boys are on this side and the girls are on that side. But my sister had met Bob, but he was too young for her. And she married somebody 6 years younger lately. But, so she brought him over and introduced him to me one time when we were all at the dances together. And then he started calling me off and on. And he was a sophomore. He was a freshman. And his sophomore, in the beginning of his sophomore year at the University of Portland, there were three roommates besides himself, and one of the boys committed suicide in the room with a gun.
Oh, no.
So Bob and one of the priests on the campus approached him and said, "Would you consider going to the University of Notre Dame? I would be glad to help you." So he went in January, and he took me out to dinner before he left and asked me if I would write to him. So that went on for several years because we were both sophomores. And I was on a 3-year program at Merrillhurst and teaching. And so his junior year, he asked me if I would come back to the junior senior prom at Notre Dame. And I asked the psychology nun if she would release me. "Are you engaged?" And I said no. Well, it's not appropriate. So
Times have changed.
So he came home in March and surprised me and asked me to marry him, and then it was all right for me to go back for the junior senior prom. But the reason he wanted me to go back was that you went up on this where they had a gazebo set up, and you danced through it, and you proposed, or you announced your engagement, and he had his heart set on that.
Yeah.
So,
Because of that nun, he could.
anyway, it worked out.
It did.
So these are the pictures. His sister and I then went back to the Notre Dame, to the prom that year, and while we were back there,
So, Mom, I'm gonna,
oh, okay.
because we can't touch, right?
Oh,
You guys
I'm
can
sorry.
look, that's right, you can and I can, because we'll wash our hands, but these guys can look at them.
okay. And so, while we were back there, Laura and I, we had our engagement blessed at in the church at Notre Dame,
Wow.
which was a big deal.
Lovely.
So when Bob graduated with honors from the University of Notre Dame,
In what degree? Accounting?
business,
Business.
I don't know, he was a financial person. And I was teaching in Eastern Oregon, and I got on the train in Baker, and his folks had gotten on in Portland, and his younger brother, and we all rode the train to Chicago. And then he met us. His folks had given him a new Chev for his birthday, brand new Chevrolet. So he met us at the train station for his graduation. Are you afraid I'm going to affect you?
No, I was
she's
making
letting
room for everybody to look. Yeah.
Oh.
To go back around. Yeah.
So then we all drove back to Oregon together. His brother, his folks, and Bob and I.
Wow.
I do not remember what the arrangement was, but I'm sure it was very monitored. For sure.
That was a quick introduction to his family. I mean,
Well,
very intimate.
I had met them, yes, because when I started going with Bob, his mother was a St. Mary's graduate, and I was a St. Mary's graduate. That right there,
You're in.
you couldn't go wrong. And so we were always good friends. And his dad was a hop farmer in St. Paul, Oregon. So, and I was raised in Portland. So anyway, we were married in September of 19, let's see, let me go back. He graduated from the University of Notre Dame. Then it was the Korean War was on. And you either went in ROTC or as an enlisted man. And he chose to go in as an enlisted man because you'd get out faster. But he found out when he was in as an enlisted man, it was not the quality of people he wanted to be with. So then he went to Officers Canada School. So we were engaged for 2.5 years before we married. And this is our wedding picture, but I don't...
So were you in college after World War II then?
Oh yeah, this was 1950.
Whoa,
I graduated from high school in 48.
You are young.
I was 18. I was born in 1930. I hope I got those numbers right. So,
Oh my goodness.
we went, our first year was in Denver. And we were married in September. In January of 54, I had a miscarriage. Nobody had heard of a miscarriage in either of our family. It was wrong. And his brother, Don, and Don's wife came on the train to Denver, and the minute they got off the train, they said, "Did you have the fetus baptized?" What? So I went to the hospital, and the nurse told me that she did baptize the fetus.
Oh,
You know,
bless her.
yeah, good for her.
Yeah.
And she said it was a little boy. Well, would you know at 2.5 months? I don't know. But, you know, everybody felt better about that then. So when we came home, we finished the schooling in Denver, and we came back to the Portland, St. Paul area, and Bob got orders to go to Morocco. So, and I found out I was pregnant in August. So these are our passports. I hadn't realized that
Wow.
we're just so gorgeous.
Yes.
And
Beautiful
And green.
passports, yeah.
so going to Morocco, he found out when he got there that
Oh,
I could not accompany him.
boy, do you look like the Deffenbach girls. And they look like you. Look at my sister Deb's.
Oh. She looks like Anya.
Yeah.
Good Anya.
Okay.
And so Bob asked to be transferred to Tripoli, Libya, because you could be accompanied by family. So that was he left in September.
So he was in the, what was in the
Air
office?
Force.
Air Force.
And my orders were not coming in, and were not coming in, and I had to be not into my 6th month, or I couldn't travel till she was 6 weeks old. So somebody that worked in the Red Cross from St. Paul, Oregon, got me a telegram sent to me from the Air Force that allowed me to travel, and that was the only paper I had, the only orders I had. So immediately, and that was in early November that we got, and I had to be on the ground by the 30th of November or I couldn't fly. So Bob's folks, and we still had that Chevrolet, so we all traveled, his folks and I traveled back. You know, no highways, no freeways, just little towns you went through every day. Every day. And his folks were farmers. We carried a dozen or so fresh eggs. And the motels in those days had kitchens. So we'd get up early, Mom would fix breakfast, and then we'd be on the road. And the big worry was the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And Dad promised us if we girls didn't bother him, and he was able to get on the turnpike and smooth sailing, he would treat us at Howard Johnson's. I mean, it was a big deal.
And he's the only one who drove, right? You guys
Oh,
never
yeah,
helped.
no, he was the only one who drove.
And it was driving from
St. Paul, Oregon to New York.
Okay.
We went and we had to put the car through the port in New Jersey. And then when we did that, well, first of all, when we got to New York off the turnpike, we were driving, you know, New York was so different in those days. And Aunt Geraldine, Bob's aunt, had stayed at a special hotel in New York, and we were headed for that. And Dad was hard of hearing. And we had the light to move, but there was a fire engine coming here. And it's scary, it was scary. And he slammed on the brakes, parking this damn car, and we're walking. And that's what happened. We took the subway, did all those things.
And when you say dad, you mean your father-in-law?
I mean, my father.
Yeah, just to be sure.
My dad was daddy.
Yeah, okay.
So we were there for a couple of days, and each of us got to choose what we wanted to do. And I wanted to go to the Rockefeller Center. And Mom wanted to go to the Empire State Building. And Dad wanted to go to the restaurant that Jack Dempsey owned. So we all did our thing. And when Dad went to the restaurant, Jack Dempsey was there. And I don't know if you know, big boxer.
Right.
And he was greeting at the door. And Dad walked in, he said, "I'm Ed Davidson from St. Paul, Oregon." And Jack Dempsey said, "Mr. Ed Davidson, I am so glad you're here. Let me see that you're seated." Now this was great for the farmers back in St. Paul, because he was going to go back and tell them all what happened. So it was great, it was great. And then after we put the car through the port in New Jersey and rode the subway, and Mom my mother-in-law, was a wonderful person, but a giggler. And she was so excited, she giggled all the time on the subway, because how did you know where to get in? How did you know where to get off? All these people were coming on at one, it was just me. From there, I took a plane to Maine, and to the Air Force Base in Maine. And no, I didn't take the plane. I took the train to the Air Force Base in Maine. And they got on the train and went to Detroit and bought a brand new car, and then went home.
What happened to the car?
We put it through the port of New Jersey.
Oh, it went.
It took 3 months to get there, but it went.
To Africa.
To Africa, yes. And then I flew, and I got in the night before Thanksgiving,
Whoa.
around midnight. And somebody was glad to see me. And then we moved out into the countryside. Bob had found a place for us to rent on a peanut farm. And none of our household goods came until the end of February. And she was born on the 23rd of March. Yeah. So, but at the air base, the policy when you were living overseas was family services would loan you one table, you know, like a card table, one chair for each of you, one plate, one bowl, all that stuff. So we survived. And then when the crib and we bought the crib over there because somebody had told Bob we needed a screened-in crib. And
have you guys seen those?
From the mosquitoes, you mean?
And tarantulas windows and.
Yeah,
So it was
scorpions and,
wire screen all the way around, a light yellow, and it had a lid over it that was a screen, so it was like a cage. What's really interesting is when Mike and I got married and lived for 2 years on Mill Creek, the previous owners had been in Peru and had the exact same crib.
The
So
same
that's
one.
what Ben was in.
Oh, wow.
It's
Cribs
really
like that, and just
interesting.
with-
I never used the lid,
Yeah,
but
right.
well, he was in the same thing. And the mattress dropped down.
Yeah.
yeah.
And the child got a little bit.
And I used it for all of mine. And then I gave that crib to, we had some friends in Panama who were adopting children from Puerto Rico and places south. And so I gave them the crib. And I came across a letter recently where she told me that all of her grandchildren had used the crib. And now her great-grandchildren are using it. So that was just a few years ago. It was a good crib.
That was
That was
a
a good crib.
Yeah.
So,
So was this place kind of isolated on the peanut farm where you were?
yes, it was very isolated. It was a 2-lane road, and I was surrounded by, no, surrounded by native people, Libyan people. So, mostly the desert people came in and during the winter time and lived across the street in the open field. And the women were definitely marked with the thing on their forehead designating the tribe, whatever. And we became very accustomed to some of the rituals that went on and some of the things we saw. And we had, before Colleen was born, we had a puppy dog, a white puppy dog, and we called it Colina because that was the name of the street we lived on. So when Colleen was born, the native people thought we named her after the dog.
And the Colina street was spelled, it was Colina Verde, and it was.
Yeah.
It's a great O in Spanish.
That must be what it was then.
What would be Italian, because Italians had taken over Libya after the war.
That would make sense, yeah.
Yeah. So when Colleen was born, Bob had never been around a little baby. He had been around, he was 6 when his youngest brother was born. But, you know, who's going to, 6-year-old, who's going to bother with the baby? And so he was enthralled with Colleen, everything Colleen did. He just couldn't get enough of it. He was wonderful. It was really wonderful. And then 2 days short of her first birthday, she had a new sister.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That close. Wow.
That's when Deb was born.
Irish
Yeah.
twins.
Wow.
That's right.
Did you go into labor on this farm and have?
Yes, yes. And of course, when Colleen was born, it was just the 2 of us, the 3 of us. And, you know, but when Deb was born, I had a woman who came 3 times a week. And she was Italian and she was very good. And so we hired her then to be there all the time while I was in the hospital. And the reason I needed a maid was that we didn't have a washing machine to speak of. We washed in the bathtub, took everything and put it in the douche bowl, put the rinse water in. And it gets kind of tricky when you're this big around. And, you know, you had to boil all your water and everything. It was just more convenient to have somebody there to help you. And I had a young male who helped me for a while, but he wouldn't have anything to do with Colleen. And she would crawl around trying to catch up with him and chase him and all. He would, you know, it's just kind of because they don't respect women. So she was a female, so he didn't have anything to do with her.
And how did you get most of your information about how to take care of a baby? 'Cause you didn't,
Dr. Spock.
and you never.
Dr. Spock was the Bible. And Dad just, everything, he would look it up in Dr. Spock.
And what was the What did you guys think about the umbilical cord when you brought it home? Brought me home?
Oh, that's right. They had told me what to do before I left the hospital, but I hadn't seen it.
Oh, they
You,
show you.
oh, you didn't do anything. The baby went out there, was brought into you, and so I didn't know. So, of course, Bob had to change her diaper when he got home to make sure everything was right. And there was this thing. Well, and we just didn't know.
They thought I had cancer.
And there was nobody to call. I didn't have a telephone. I wouldn't have known, you know. Other people that worked in the office with him were in town, but nobody had a phone. It was,
And then how did you let the folks back home know that?
oh, that was another thing that my children and grandchildren can't believe. We wrote them a letter. We wouldn't call.
Long distance.
If you called,
Yeah.
something awful had happened.
Yeah.
And so we had sent a postcard announcing the birth with a picture on the other side of, do you have one of those?
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Who was with you during the labor?
Bob,
Oh.
yeah, we had no idea what to expect.
But he wasn't with you in the room while I was being born, was he?
Not when you were born, but in the labor, he sat with me. We prayed the rosary, and then we read the paper. Believe it? And
And you didn't have a TV in the room, of course.
oh no,
Yeah.
just the two of us, and it hadn't happened. I mean, it just was. We were so green.
So what was the hospital recommendation? Did they have a regimen for you, like walk and sit and drink and?
Nothing.
No, nothing.
Nothing.
Lie,
And I tried to nurse,
lie on your side.
and they told me I couldn't nurse because my milk didn't come in. And the reason the milk didn't come in is because I was drinking canned milk, because you couldn't buy fresh milk over there. And then when Colleen had Anya, and I came, and Ben, I suppose too, and I saw how easy nursing was. And then Lalaisha came and helped you when you had a problem. You know, so through all my pregnancies, I had ice packs and everything.
Oh, because you were having let down
And,
and bored.
yes,
Oh,
and it was
my.
totally unnecessary. And of course, both our mothers had nurse, so I was really different.
Yeah. It
And
was a different time.
Yeah.
like different time.
Was it, my mom was put under for all her babies. Was
Well-
it natural or?
It was natural. It was natural, and Deb was a cesarean because she came placenta previa. And then Lynn came feet first. And that was
That
another
seems
bad,
appropriate for Lynn.
yeah,
Walks.
Yeah.
and then after that it was cesareans.
So 4 out of 6 were cesarean.
Yeah.
So it's you, Deb, Lynn,
Aaron, Bonnie, Rhonda.
and then how many years between them?
So the first 4.
Not enough, Mary
Yeah.
Jo.
Within 4 years, she had 4 children. So 3.5 years, she had 4 children, and then they were 3 years apart, Connie and
You were like always pregnant or just had a baby? Wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember the doctor that helped you deliver, Colleen?
Yes, he was Lebanese, and he spoke pretty good English. But the nurses were all kind of young, and they were American. But between the doctor and the nurses, they didn't know a lot about maternity care. And so that was,
Mom, was the hospital on a base, or was it?
the hospital was on the base.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I remember there was some talk about one of the reasons you almost didn't dance with Dad back then.
Back to the beginning.
When Rosemary introduced you,
Well,
you didn't like something he was wearing.
oh, that's right. He had spectator shoes. And you guys won't remember this, but there was a commercial that ran on the radio that come to Faye Brockman for your shoes or for your menswear. And he and his mother had gone shopping at Faye Brockman in Portland, and he bought Spectator shoes